Untitled. Hello and welcome to another live show, a live stream here at Edgerator headquarters. And this weekend, this is Sunday, and I have a special report to show. So I've been doing a lot of research recently into seasonality, and what I thought I would do, seeing as we are at the end of April, all of the trading days in April have passed, is take a look at the seasonality for April as it was predicted at the beginning of the year and compare it to the actual results, what actually happened to the stocks in April. So I would like to show the methodology I used to calculate that and show some of the extra things that I did in the software and also using Excel. Also, at the end, I would like to show the upcoming seasonality for May. So, this is, I actually recorded a little bit of this earlier this morning, and so we will watch this together. Okay. Right, so here I am in the seasonality template in Edgerator, which you'll find under the list of categories over here. Just do a search for seasonality, you'll find it there. And the template I want to take a look at is seasonality by month. Now, I have run this at the beginning of the year to get the seasonality for all securities for each month of the year. And that has been done as of the beginning of this year. So I have that report already, and what I will do is I'll go into the report viewer and I will open it up. It's not this report, it's I will just come into my Edgerator reports and I've got seasonality here, seasonality by month 2021. So I'll just open that up. I'll close this other one down because that was just something I was doing before we went live. So this is the seasonality as it was at the beginning of this year and what it was talking about for each of the individual months of the year. Now we have just gone through April, so these columns here would be applicable for April. So what I thought it would be interesting to do would be to take a look at the April seasonality as it was at the beginning of this year, what it predicted for April in terms of seasonality, and take a look at what actually happened during April for all those securities. So one template that's really good for finding out what's happened in any historical period is the good, bad, and ugly template. So let's go to that template, and we can find that under the hot topics category. So search for hot topics and you'll find the good, bad, ugly template. I've actually got this in my favorites because that's something I run fairly frequently, so I can also find that in my favorites here. So good, bad, ugly template. And the list I have on the left-hand side of the screen here is the list of all USA.txt. There's 7,750 stocks in that list. So I'm just going to go ahead and run the good, bad, ugly template. And that's going to go through all 7,750 stocks. And it's going to create a report of the percentage gain for many different time periods. The current day, or the prior day, the prior week, week to date, month to date, year to date, prior weeks, prior months, and prior years. So quite a lot of different percent returns. So you'll see that in a second. That's why it's taken a little while to process. It's actually going through and processing quite a lot of data, but gives a really good snapshot of the information after it's finished. So let's just wait for that to finish. You can always see how close it is to finishing by looking at the bottom left of the screen. And the bottom left of the screen, there's a progress bar. So it shows it's running through the T's at the moment. Now it's coming into the U's. Just about to finish. I'll take a little sip of coffee. Okay, so this is the layout of the report, as I said before. Current periods in terms of the day, week to date, month to date, year to date, and then prior days, prior weeks, prior months, and prior years. So very clean synopsis of returns over multiple periods for all of the stocks. So seeing as we are at the end of April, if I look at the column prior, the column month to date, and I sort by month to date, then I will see a list in terms of the best performing stocks for April. SNCA is the best performing stock. Let's take a quick look. SNCA. To me, this just looks like the data is, this is not correct, I believe. I think SNCA is actually, SNCA was probably a split, unless that's actually true, and the split will be incorporated into the data in the next day. So we'll ignore that. That was a split that happened on, actually on probably Wednesday. So let's just zoom in a little bit on that. And we see that's on a Wednesday. So we don't have any data on there for Thursday and Friday. So that's a little suspicious already. And if we go back to the date here, the date column, it tells us, so 4/28 is the last date we have for SNCO. So we can just ignore that one. Well, let's go down to, let's just filter to dates that are actually April. We'll choose to unselect everything, and we're only going to select where April 30th is the last day. So these are all stocks that actually have a bar of data for April 30th. And now we can sort by month to date. And here's a list then of the best performing stocks in April, starting with ACY with 196% gain. ACY, and you can see what happened here. This is the beginning of April, and this is the end of April. So low price stock, but it started off the month, and I believe that the month to date is looking at the performance from the close of the prior month to the close of the day that we're running. So that would have been from 359 up to 1050, which, as it says in here, is a 196% gain. So you can go down through the list. You can look at this one here, TYHT, UXIN. These are all the best performing stocks. Obviously, we can do a reverse sort on here, and we can find all of the worst performing stocks. Some big losing stocks here. Okay, so kind of a mix of big winning stocks and big losing stocks. Of course, you'll notice that stock can never lose more than 100%, but the stock can make more than 100%. And actually, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times there have been 7 stocks that made more than 100% in April. So let's just remember that. Now, what I wanted to do was see if there's any correlation between what was predicted for seasonality for April and what actually happened in April. And I'm going to show a technique for doing that. This involves actually opening up Excel and taking the data out and doing a little bit of looking at it within the Microsoft Excel spreadsheet program. But first off, let's just see where we're at, what we're going to do. So here's my seasonality as predicted for April. What I'll do is I'll highlight these columns. These are all the April columns, and I'll say at the top of this list, copy the column. Okay. And now I'll go back to the good, bad, ugly template, and I'll make sure that I've got in here display headings. That will add these headings that were hidden before for more real estate, but the normal headings that you see in a spreadsheet are now added. And what I can do is copy. So if I highlight the F column, and I'll say insert copied column. All right, so it's going to insert the 3 columns that I copied, but it's going to match them up properly with the symbol. So it doesn't matter the order of the symbol in the good, bad, ugly template. If that differs from the order of the symbol in the seasonality template, which it does differ, it will just match up the symbols and put the data in the correct row. Okay, so now, as you can see, we've got the predictions for April, and then the month to date column is what actually happened in April. So here's where I will then save this and open this up in Excel and go and do a little bit of investigation. So let me save that as, and I'll save this as, I'll call it live stream. We'll call it April predicted versus actual. And that will save that as a spreadsheet. And then I'll open that up in live stream April predicted versus actual. Open that up in Excel. So all EdgeRater reports that are generated are all Excel files. So you can see that it's easy to open them up in Excel. And I'm just going to cut this down to size for the things we actually need. So I can get rid of all of these columns here. I'm not interested for this particular analysis in those columns. I can get rid of the day and week to date columns. So I'll delete those. I can delete the year to date column. Okay, delete that. I don't really need all of the other things either, but we can, they're not really getting in the way or taking up too much of the screen, so I'll leave them there. Okay, so now I have a list of what was predicted. And when I say predicted, it's not really saying a prediction, it's saying what's happened in the past. in April for the prior 10 years. So, for instance, ACY does have 10 years of data, because we can see it's a 5 and a 5 column, and 5 of the prior years have been up years, 5 have been down years, with an average gain of 3%. This is the stock that in April had this April 21 had 196% gain. Okay, so you can go down through and see all of those. But what is going to be interesting is to see if the predictions actually were useful at all for April. So how are we going to do that? That's the question. So what would be a good idea would be to put a couple of columns in here. We'll put a column for whether it was greater than 0% for April, whether it was less than 0% for April, or whether it was equal to 0% for April. And then we'll have to just put a nice little formula in here. I'll just say that equals if. It's an if. This value, month to date, was greater than 0, then put a 1 in this column, otherwise put a 0 in this column. Okay, and we'll do that for, we'll copy that over to here and here. But of course, when we do the copy, I just have to go back and make sure that we're looking at the right month to date column. So that's correct, and that's correct. Okay. Of course, I have to change this to be a less than 0, and this to be a equal to 0. All right. And now what I can do is copy that and just copy that all the way down through the columns here, through the rows, all the way down to the end, and just paste that. Okay, so now I have a 1. If it's less than 0 in this middle column, you see these are all negative returns for the month. When we get up into the positive returns for the month, you'll see the other columns all go to a 1. So that's just a way that I'll be able to now count how many of these stocks were positive for the month and how many were negative for the month. And this column up here, I'm going to actually delete the rows that don't have any predictions as such, just to avoid including those. So what we can do here is set a filter on one of these columns and just say include only blanks. And then what I'll do is I'll just go through and delete these columns that are blank. They didn't have predictions, and I don't want them to mess with the calculations here. So I'll delete those. 391 records of the 7,750. Okay, and then I'll remove that filter, clear that filter, and now all of the rows that I have in here actually have predictions, right? So just to make this clear what I'm looking at, these are the predictions. It's not really predictions. I should say this is we'll leave it as predictions. But if you're using seasonality as a predictive seasonality template to be predictive, then these are predictions. So I'll leave that over there. We'll call that predictions, and this would be the actual. Okay. So what I then want to do is get a total. And before we do that, let's just create some extra space here. If I go to freeze panes and unfreeze all the panes here, okay, so I'm going to create a little area that I can do some work. Insert row, insert row. So I have a few rows up here. Insert row. That should be enough. What I would like to do is find out the count that were positive returns for the month. So we can do that with the Excel function subtotal, which takes into account filtered rows. That's why I would use subtotal. Otherwise, you could use sum, but sum doesn't take into account filtered rows. So we use subtotal, and we'll say count, which is the number 2, and then we'll give it a reference. I'm going to count all of these, and I'll just use my mouse to select the rows. Okay. These. Count all of these. Thank you. Good. Well, that can't be correct, can it? Subtotal 2 is obviously incorrect. Let's have a look at that. 2 is the count. I'm not really... Okay, so I've obviously selected too many. That should be J2, J12 to J... Yeah, not I12. So we'll take that to J12. You see I've selected too many columns there. So... and now I've removed my 2. The count is correct. Okay, 7215. Sorry about that. So there we go. If I highlight that, you can see what it is counting. It's counting the values in here. So without doing any filtering on this, there are 7,215 positive results for... Okay, here's where I've gone wrong. Excuse me. This should not be a count. Count is actually just the count of non-blank rows. What we actually need is the sum. Of course, we need the sum. Okay, number 9 is the calculation for sum. All right, so 4,840 of these stocks were positive during April. Positive return for April. 4,840. Now, if I copy that over to here, now we've got the sum of these, which is 2,338. And if I copy that over one more time to here, there were 37 that were 0%. All right, the total of that is, it should add up to the 7,215. We could just sum those just as a quick verification. We'll sum all those together, 7,215, right there. Okay, and that sum is just going to help us to figure out what percentage of these were positive and what percentage were negative. So I can say, here I'm looking for a percentage, so it's going to be equals this value divided by 7215. If I put F4 on there, that will just fix that. We need to just format paint that because it's grayed out, but that's correct. And then I need to put a percentage, make that a percentage field, so 67%. And if I copy this over to these two columns, then we've got, just check that, that's 2338 divided by 7215, and this one is 37 over 7215, 1%. So 67% positive. That's in total of all of the stocks. So what if we then filter this so that we're looking at stocks that only had a prediction where there were, let's say, 10, 9, 8, or 7 up years. Well, for a start, let's just say 10 up years. Keep it simple. So 10 up years. And so these are all the stocks that had 10 up years, okay? So there's a total of 70, yes. We still have we still have a number here for, and that's interesting, isn't it? Okay, so these had 10 up years. Yeah. Okay, so that makes sense. I just thought I'd said 10 up years, but the average was negative. That couldn't have been true. But no, that wasn't the average. That was the actual years negative. So in the cases where in the prior 10 years there have been 10 of those years have been up years, and of course the average is positive because all 10 of the years have been up years. Well, 93% this April, 93% of those were positive, which is higher than, we know that in total there were 60, what did it say before? Clear that filter. 67% of all of them were positive. Well, 93% of the ones that had 10 up years were positive. So that it does indicate that there was some correlation between what was predicted and what actually happened. So what about the down years? If we went and changed this over to be down year predictions, let's try that. So I'm on the down column here, and I'm going to say only show me the 10 where we had 10 down years. There were only 4 of those, and 100. So there were only 4 that had 10 down years, and 100% of them this April had a down month. Okay, so let's just be clear about what we're looking at here. This is a prediction that was made at the beginning of the year for April. I use the word prediction kind of lightly. It's not trying to predict what's going to happen, but it's saying at the beginning of the year, when it looked back over the past 10 years, this was the seasonality for all of these stocks. So 10 up years, or in this case, sorry, 10 of the prior years were down years. Well, for April, not for the year, for April, 10 of the prior years were down years for April. This April, the month that just happened, 100% of those were actually negative. So that's very interesting, particularly seeing as 67% of the overall stocks were positive. So let's include a little bit more than 10. We'll try 10 and 9. And you can see you've still got 89%, which is pretty good. But you can also say, well, I only really want to know if there were a negative average percent over that time period. You could say that. Let's just keep going the way we are for now. I'm going to keep things a little bit more simple. So 10, 9, and 8. Let's have a look at that. Well, now we're at 68% were this April were negative. So that's still pretty good, 10, 9, and 8, because April overall, 67% of the stocks in April ended up, 67% of the stocks in April ended up positive. And yet, out of the stocks that where the seasonality was bearish, 68% of those stocks were negative. So that does definitely have a good correlation. So let's try one more. We'll include 10, 9, 8, and 7. So what we're saying here is that there were either 10 of the prior years, 9, 8, or 7 of the prior years were negative. Now we're down to 57, but we are also including in here cases where the average is positive. So it's possible that you had 7 down years, but the 3 up years could have outweighed those 7 down years. And so you could end up with a positive average. So what happens if we take this average and we say the average here should be, number filter, should be less than, let's say 5%, negative 5%. Okay. Right. So now, out of those predictions where we've clarified it and said we only want stocks where the average has been negative 5% or lower, with 10, 9, 8, or 7 of the years being down years. Now we've gone back up to a 76% of those predictions came true. You could call them predictions, that they came true this April. So that's very interesting. Now let's go back to the positive side and look for, so we'll clear the filter from here, we'll clear the filter from here, and we'll take, on the upside, we'll take 10s, 9s, 8s, and 7s for the upside. Okay, 83% positive. And when we require price to be greater than 5% on average, That's actually takes this down to 70%. Okay, but if you don't have that price filter in there, then you're at 83%. So actually a better prediction in this case. So it definitely looks like the seasonality for April played out very well. Not everything matched. I mean, in the cases where you had, there were some cases where there were 8 up years and 2 down years, so it would tend to indicate that there's seasonality on the upside in April. Some of those cases had negative results in April, but when you go through the entire list, it bears paying attention to, because there's some relevance there. There was some relevance there for this April. Okay, so that's just how you can a good example actually of using the templates in EdgeRater to produce reports which are Excel reports, and then opening those reports up in Excel. So we mix the data together in EdgeRater. We use that cool little feature where you can copy columns and insert them into other reports, and it pays attention to the symbols, so adds them into the right row, and then save that as an Excel spreadsheet, opened it up in Excel, and did some further manipulation. It's one of the big powerful features of EdgeRater Pro 2020. Okay, so let's come back into, just out of interest here, always like to do this. Let's come to here, and I think, well, we already saw the big up stocks and the big down stocks. Let's choose a layout that might make sense for here, like a nice little squeeze layout. Or we could choose another layout, just an in-play layout, or a free parking layout. Free parking is the 50-period moving average and how close price is to the 50-period moving average. Or you could just make it even cleaner than that, and we can take that off, and we can remove the 50-period moving average from there. And so you just have pure price. Okay. That's getting down to the pure technical analysis is price on its own, looking for your eye is not strayed by other things on the chart. Some people like it like that. So what I'll do then is just quickly scroll down through here, and we already saw those stocks that did well in April. Okay, good. So what about then seasonality for May? We're just about to enter May. So if seasonality in April worked, then seasonality in May, maybe that has a chance of working as well. So let's take a look at what has good seasonals for May. So I've got my seasonality by month. I did run this at the beginning of the year, remember? But you could actually run this today, this template today, and it would have exactly the same result for May. However, if you ran this today and used the April column, it wouldn't be correct, because it would include the month that has just happened. So in that case, you would have actually you wouldn't have done a pure test of the seasonality prediction versus the actual results, because you'd have mixed in this year's results. So, but for May, we don't have to worry about that, because May is coming up, and there's no contamination of data into May in this case. So what has been good for May. Now, a lot of these only have two and one, so 2 up years, 1 down year. It means there's only 3 years in total of data, so it does not necessarily make a good statistical prediction. So what I like to do is filter this down to, as you saw in the way we analyzed the data before, the 10s, 9s, 8s, and 7s. And just take a look at those. So here we have Arena Pharmaceuticals. Let's just scroll over to the right-hand side of the chart. Make this a little bigger. And expand the chart if we want to. Okay, so Arena Pharmaceuticals has good seasonality, 7 up years, 2 down years for May. Precipio is $1.82, has good seasonality in May, 8 up years, 2 down years. Flexible Solutions, FSI, also has good seasonality for May. So all of that, you can just use your keyboard to select the different cells, and the chart will update, so it's really easy to see. Now, of course, I realize I've been doing this without allowing you to see the chart because there is a camera overlay on there, so that's not good, is it? No. Right, so let's go back to look at Arena Pharmaceuticals. There we go. And as I scroll down through, here's Precipio. Here's Flexible Solutions International, Chegg, ISR. All of these have good seasonality for May. So, and we know that in April, the seasonality played out on the whole, but not everything that had good seasonality for April had a great result in April, and that you would not expect everything to have that. So you have to bear that in mind. What you're trying to do, I think, with the seasonality is to say that it's giving you an extra little bit of chance here, an extra little edge. If you're trading the stocks that do have good seasonality, you can then look for other patterns and do other technical analysis to figure out whether they would potentially make good trades. And then you can start looking for your regular technical patterns. But nice if you have the seasonality and that you now have a short list of stocks to think about trading for from May. And also bearing in mind that in April, all of the stocks that had 10 down years and no up years, all of those stocks lost in April. So if you found something like that from May, let's take a look at that. So I'll clear that filter on the upside. And we'll say 10, well, had 10 down Mays. These stocks here. So these are all stocks that probably shouldn't think about trading. This one, though, looks exciting, but based on the previous analysis of April, that's not great. So you might want to avoid getting involved in the excitement of that. Of course, it could win, but you just don't know. Okay, it's just trying to get you on the right side of things. So there we go. Okay, that's it. A nice little quick analysis of seasonality for April and what versus what actually happened in April, and then a look into the May seasonality. Okay, so so that's it. Quick review of April and upcoming for May with seasonality. These templates are all available in EdgeRater Pro 2020. You can take a free trial of EdgeRater Pro 2020 if you just head over to the website. Also, remember to subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you come to youtube.com/EdgeRater, you'll find a subscribe button. If you click on that and then click on the notification,
okay,
and
so that's it. Quick review.
So you'll be notified whenever a new video
April
is posted,
and upcoming for May with seasonality.
Live stream is
These templates
also
are all available in
EdgeRater
Pro 2020. You can take a free trial of EdgeRater Pro 2020.
Of EdgeRater.
Just head over to the
website, your
website,
information, and you'll be sent a link for a free trial.
Also,
do everything you've seen
remember
today
to subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you come to
once you're on this page here, you can click on to just EdgeRater
subscribe button,
main page,
on that,
and
then
there is
click
a
on
big
the
notification button.
So that's it. Quick review.
So you'll be notified whenever a new video
April
is posted,
and upcoming for May with seasonality.
Live stream is
These templates are all available.
So that's it. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.